So I kind of got you excited about the idea of employment planning and how it is natural, and I saw lots of nodding heads in agreement that we can figure this out, right? We can figure this out for youth with disabilities, and I get parents excited and I get teachers excited and service professionals, but then I get the buts. But there's barriers, right? So it's great to have all these aspirations about employment, but how are we going to do it if we can't even get the person there every day, if there's transportation barriers? Or if the person has never had a job, how do we know what to do? Or will employers hire them? Or how do we make sure that they don't lose their benefits the first day they get a paycheck? So there's all these other things that we have to figure out. It's not just so much the fun, career exploration, figure out the interests, do some job shadows. It's also dealing with the realities, the barriers to employment. So I'm going to go through these common barriers one by one and provide some solutions, possible tools or things, ways to consider managing or addressing these barriers. So inexperienced and uncertain goals. That's a big one for youth, right? We were all there. So there are some strategies, you see them here, that I tend to help people focus on when I'm working with them if they have, if they're unsure what they want to do, or they haven't had a lot of experiences to make choices. Because we need to have something to hang our hat on, right? We need to have something. We need to have a goal to write on the IPE, right? We need to have something out there. We need to have a direction. So in order to figure out even a preliminary goal, some of these things might be helpful to consider. Transferable skills, ideal conditions, assessments, adapting career exploration tools that exist out there, doing some tours, job shadows, and informational interview, doing some volunteering, and DVR temporary work. So transferable skills, we all have them. Okay, they're the skills and abilities that we have in all parts of our life, not just work. Transferable skills are a buzzword in the workforce development world right now too, because there's so many people that have to retool or change jobs and careers because of layoffs, right now. So if you Google transferable skills, for instance, you will come up with a ton of results on a search engine of these nice checklists that you can go through with literally hundreds of tick marks, little boxes by different skills that you might have that are transferable. Some of them are kind of soft skills. Some of them are definitely more, task-oriented skills, okay? And you can use those transferable skills inventories that exist on the web with students, okay, or with your family members. Everyone has transferable skills. I like to take a simple approach and a team-based approach to determining transferable skills. And in your handouts, there is a worksheet that you can, we're not going to do it tonight, but this is something that you can take home or take to school to think about and start identifying transferable skills, okay? The process to do that is really simple. It could mean that the student or family member is observed in different environments and someone else writes down the transferable skills, or it could mean that the student does it themselves and inventories their own transferable skills, okay? But it starts with first identifying all the places you go and things that you do in your life, okay? So you'll see on the worksheet there's a blue box, and there's an example of school, babysitting, home, helping children in a worship center at church, walking grandma's dog, using the computer. So you just start with that list, okay? Then if you flip over to the next page, for each one of those environments, the person or the person observing the person could write down the specific tasks that they perform. okay? And whether or not they do this independently, you know, could do it with some training, or if they need some ongoing support to do that. And then another thing that you could do, too, is even add like a plus or minus to say whether or not you like doing that particular thing. So here's an example of a basic transferable skills list that we quickly developed with a team just through conversation, okay? And this was for a guy up north in a rural community who was attending a day center, and many people on his team did not feel he was employable, but his family got him involved in a kind of a family-led project to help figure out employment for him. So they really wanted him to be working in the community, so they took the lead. And so, you know, these are all the things that he did at home, in his home life. They lived in a rural community out in the country, and he did a lot of stuff around the house. So he mowed the grass, swept floors, vacuumed, pushed the cart outside around, you know, would pour drinks for the family, get the table set, you know, all these different things, okay? So he had all these skills. And this is a guy who, you know, people scratched their head and said, what could he do? What kind of work skills does he have? Now, you could imagine that many of these skills, these things, he could do for an employer, right? You could bundle up a few of these and he could be doing this or that or another thing, right? So those are all skills that are transferable into the workplace. And that's the value that families bring to the employment planning process often, is we see our family members doing things that school doesn't see. So I would definitely urge you to, you know, make copies of that transferable skills worksheet, disperse it amongst your team, your employment planning team, and have people observe, or, you know, ask the young person to write down what they're doing in different places, and then take a look at that, and maybe look at that with more weight than you do that assessment that's standing in the way. So again, when people don't have a lot of experience, a lot of work history, often they don't know what they want to do. It's helping them narrow down their ideal conditions for employment is helpful. And so we all have ideal conditions, like I said before. We all need to have certain things in place in order to be happy, well-motivated employees. Think about what some of your own ideal conditions are. You know, the environment, the time of day that you work, the proximity to your house. If you had to commute an hour a day to work, would that make, you know, that could make or break an employment arrangement for some people, right? To have to commute that far. Sometimes it comes down to pay. Some people won't settle for a certain amount of pay because they want, if they're going to be working, they want to be making what they feel they're worth, right? So we all have those conditions. And in your packet, there is a worksheet with some instructions on figuring out those ideal conditions. Okay, so it's where, with whom, and what, you know, when we're at our best. And it's a real simple inventory that that you can do for yourself or with your family member or with the person that you're working with. There are lots of career and vocational assessments on the web. I'd say the two most important ones to, you know, portals to go through would be the Wisconsin Job Center. There's a number of different tools on the Job Center website. And then there's also the Career Pathways website that is used by schools around the state. Each high school also has probably more resources for, you know, career and interest inventories at their disposal. So these work for some people and not for others. There are also resources at local libraries and colleges. So if your school or community doesn't, you know, have a lot of choices, go to the nearest technical college. Their career centers are open to the general public, to the community, anyone considering taking a class. Okay. There are also the assessments that we've kind of been mentioning. There's job and situational assessments, vocational evaluations, supported employment assessments. They're, all service providers and tools do different things with their assessments. So, I would say pick the right assessment for you. Find out from a service provider or find out from your DVR counselor or your teacher about these assessments and whether they seem to be a good fit or not. What are the typical outcomes? What information is gathered from them? How is this going to help me? So before you go through an assessment, ask about it. Okay. Think about yourself, and whether if your doctor was to say, okay, go through this and do, you'd want to know a little bit about what is that going to do for me, or if somebody wanted to have you take some tests and things like that, you'd want to know why and how will this help me in my path. So, going back to research here. Now there's some research out there that says that traditional employment assessments may be somewhat invalid because depending on how the assessment is structured, the person may or may not be making informed choices. So, when you think about the assessments that put people into a predetermined set of jobs, that really aren't fitting within their interests or things that they've chosen, let's step back and think about the validity of those assessments and how much depth there is to them, okay? So again, find out about the assessment before you go through it. And if traditional assessments don't seem to be the best fit, there are some other tools. There is a assessment process called the discovery process in the customized employment method, okay, the customized employment process. And DVR, for instance, does purchase that service. There's a criteria for, accessing customized employment services through DVR, but it is a possibility. There are adult service providers all around the state who understand how to do a discovery assessment. And there are a number of schools in Wisconsin who have also been trained and informed on that method, the discovery method. I know the Let's Get to Work schools, for instance, we've shared some information about discovery with the staff involved in the grant. So. And then there are the person-centered planning tools that Cindy mentioned in her session last time. So for inexperienced and uncertain goals, sometimes volunteering is a way to figure out, what you're good at, what you're interested in. It can give you some, current experience and references on a resume. Volunteering actually has the same health and social benefits that employment does. So, people who volunteer are healthier and happier. One way to get in touch with a volunteer opportunity is to go through this volunteermatch.org. United Way also has information on local volunteering opportunities. A caution about volunteering is to be mindful of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Typically volunteering for any sort of for-profit enterprise, i.e. a regular business, is not allowed, okay? I would look for bona fide volunteer programs so that as schools and as individuals, as schools, you're not connecting people to experiences and situations that will be in violation of Fair Labor Standards Act, and then two, as individuals, you're not being exploited in the workplace for providing services that are benefiting an employer. And one thing, not just experience. Volunteering doesn't just provide us with experiences, it also expands our network for job searching. So we'll talk a little bit about personal networks and jobs in just a little bit. And as you volunteer, you get to know people, and you have co-volunteers or co-workers, and they can all be instrumental in helping to find a job. So experiences, experiences, experiences. You keep hearing me say that as a way to, the only way to get experiences is to have experiences, right? And so informational interviews, job shadows, and tours are really helpful. I say set up as many as you can, you know, as often as you can. Get out there and experience things, okay? Meet with employers, talk with people about, you know, even on an informal basis what they do, and start learning. In DVR temporary work, this is a formalized service through DVR, so when somebody is working with DVR and has written their IPE, DVR may be able to add this to a person's employment plan, and it's a way to get some current work experience on your resume, as well as just the experience itself of knowing you can do a job, getting a good reference from an employer, that kind of thing. The time-limited paid arrangement, DVR pays the wages if an employer provides an opportunity for you to do work at their work site, so for their business. So Meredith might be able to talk about this a little bit more when she talks about DVR services.